Single dad CEO shocks everyone. Transformative moment when a poor woman only wanted bread. James strolled through the grocery store, exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. As CEO of a tech startup, the endless demands of board meetings and growth strategies occupied his mind. But amidst the smell of freshly baked bread, he encountered a scene that jolted him back to reality. A frail woman, her hands rough and worn, stood hesitantly at the bread aisle, her timid request breaking through the hum of chatter. "Excuse me, sir, could you help me with a loaf of bread?" The sincerity in her voice caught James off guard, wrestling with a flood of emotions. Was she really asking for just bread, or was there something deeper, a silent cry for help in a world where hope felt like a fading whisper? He felt torn. His instincts urged him to retreat. He had enough problems of his own with the startup on shaky ground, an ambitious rival lurking in the shadows, determined to thwart his efforts. He hesitated, questioning whether he could afford this distraction. Yet, her eyes conveyed a level of determination that mirrored his own. They stood at opposite ends of the spectrum, he, a man trying to secure a better future for his daughter, and she, a woman battling the tides of despair. For a fleeting moment, they were both searching for deservedness, for recognition, but in that very instant, the starkness of their realities collided. As their conversation unfolded, he learned her name Sarah and discovered the devastating backstory of missed opportunities and unyielding dreams. He found himself enchanted by the fire she ignited while recounting her desires for a brighter life for her children. There was creativity lurking beneath layers of hardship, and something within him stirred. He began mentoring her, uncovering her latent talents in the tech space, harboring the hope that they could partner together. Yet doubt gnawed at him. What if his commitments in the startup consumed him entirely, leaving him no time or energy for this new relationship? He felt the weight of his responsibilities clawing at him, a constant reminder of the precarious balance he had to maintain. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as James started to find his footing in this unexpected mentorship, his professional life began to unravel. Corporate pressure intensified at his company, and his rival began whispering poison, sowing seeds of doubt among his team about James' leadership. What if his recognition evaporated as the wind blew? The realization struck him like a thunderclap. His ascent was hanging by a thread, and Sarah's potential seemed to shine brighter than the dawn, ready to disrupt the status quo, yet bound to the very system threatening his stability. The temptation to advance his own career swirled inside him. Did he dare gamble on Sarah's innovative idea while navigating through the murky waters of deceit? In those moments of racing thoughts, muscle tension, and irregular breathing, James struggled with the weight of his choices. Should he follow a path tainted with self-preservation or risk it all to lift her and potentially himself towards their dreams? Just as clarity began to surface, an unexpected twist unraveled everything, leaving him teetering on the precipice of a decision that could alter both their futures irrevocably. Would he rise as champion, or would the inferno of ambition consume them both? James stared blankly at his computer screen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard, yet the words eluded him. The startup's quarterly report loomed ahead, a monstrous beast bearing down every statistic, every analysis, reflected the fragile state of his empire. Yet, his thoughts kept spiraling back to Sarah, her face painted with hope amid the backdrop of despair. The juxtaposition was jarring, an emotional rippling that refused to settle. He felt anchored by the weight of her dreams, knowing they carried the promise of redemption. But how could he possibly juggle these newfound ambitions with his own crumbling reality? After another hour of fruitless tinkering with spreadsheets, he pushed away from his desk, his mind clouded with a sense of urgency to act, not merely react. In that moment, he realized the gnawing restless energy wasn't just anxiety. It was a driving force urging him to embrace Sarah's potential. His own dreams had been hovering on the edges, waiting for a catalyst. Why not be that catalyst for someone else? She had been tentative when he first approached her, vulnerable beneath layers of struggle. But with each session spent on tech strategies and brainstorming for her app idea, her confidence began to bloom. There were traces of brilliance in her concepts, a fresh perspective, a raw creativity that left James feeling invigorated yet frayed. Yet, the nagging thoughts circled around him. Could this effort of sharing his expertise benefit her, or would it lead to his own professional demise? Pulling out his phone, he stared at her contact number, thinking of the last conversation they had. "James, if we can present this app correctly," she had said, "it could change so many lives, including ours." The sincerity in her voice echoed in his mind, flickering like a flame just waiting to spark something larger. Yet doubt crept in. Was it wise to intertwine their destinies when his own was precariously hanging by a thread? Days passed, and he wrestled with his thoughts, torn between the anguish of uncertainty and the exhilaration of taking this leap of faith. James knew that part of being a leader was embracing the risk, risking not just financially, but emotionally too. The stark realization of how much he was holding back for fear of failing gripped him. It felt paralyzing. Was he living up to his values? His role as a father, a leader, a mentor, did they not require boldness? As he grappled with his internal strife, the board meeting neared. Whispers of dissent and the clamor for accountability buzzed within the glass walls. His rival's increasing boldness pushed him towards a corner, words full of venom as if waiting for the moment to pounce. With every tick of the clock, he felt the encroachment of despair on both personal and professional fronts. The heat within pushed him to act. Determined to confront the lurking shadows influencing his team, James planned to lay bare the truth about his leadership, the vision he held, and most importantly, about Sarah. The upcoming meeting would be the pivotal moment to pivot the narrative, a declaration that he wouldn't remain silent, unwilling to let his fears comply with his rival's games. But, as he gathered his documents, a new dread began to froth within. The risk of bringing Sarah into his turmoil could backfire. Should he recruit her to present their idea alongside him? Would that amplify the stakes, or could it truthfully forge an alliance amidst the encroaching chaos? The clock was ticking, and as he weighed his options, clarity stared back. Perhaps his future could hinge not just on individual ambition, but on the strength forged in partnership. With his heart racing, he pressed dial, her name moving to the forefront of his mind, igniting a flicker of hope as he prepared to step into the fire that could reshape both their paths. The time had come to face not just the board, but his fear of allowing himself to truly believe in the power of collaboration. What awaited him could spell triumph or ruin. Would they forge ahead together, or would the shadows of doubt extinguish the light before it ever ignited? As the phone rang, James's pulse quickened. The prospect of aligning with Sarah felt almost electric, yet the weight of impending doom lingered, threatening to overshadow the excitement. "Please, answer," he whispered under his breath. When she finally picked up, her voice was light and hopeful, a stark contrast to his inner turmoil. "James. I was just thinking about our last session," she said, enthusiasm ringing through the uncertainty that had cloaked his heart for days. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something important." He felt the urge to be direct, to lay everything bare. He paused, considering how to frame his words without overshadowing the flicker of ambition she had ignited. "How would you feel about presenting your app idea alongside me at the board meeting?" Silence stretched between them, and he held his breath, fearing she might withdraw into doubt. Instead, he heard the excitement build in her voice. "I'd love that. But will everyone be open to that? Especially with everything that's happening at your company? I can't promise acceptance, but I believe in your vision. And I think they need to see it. I need them to see it." The tremor in his voice betrayed his apprehension, an undercurrent of self-doubt raging against his determination. "We can do this, James." Together, Sarah reassured him, her optimism a balm to his frayed nerves. The following days were a blur of frantically refining their pitch, unraveling their ideas into a cohesive narrative that would resonate with the board. James found himself immersed in the creativity and tenacity that Sarah exuded. Their late-night brainstorming sessions blended into laughter and unearthed moments of vulnerability, stripping away layers of loneliness he had draped over himself like a protective shroud. He could feel his instincts sharpening, reigniting the professional dreams he had put on hold. However, a chilling reminder of the impending board meeting lingered in his mind, a specter that loomed larger with every passing hour. The board members were keenly aware of his recent leadership struggles. He could almost feel their skepticism dripping through the formalities. Would they scoff at Sarah's ideas? Would they view her as a mere reflection of his failing leadership? The tension spiraled as the meeting day approached. Abandoning his tendency toward meticulous preparation, James shifted tactics. He sought authenticity, deciding that dignity lay not in perfection but in showcasing the courage to transform. He and Sarah would present as equals, a calculated risk that felt invigorating. As he entered the boardroom, he retained a mask of confidence while internally, doubt undulated beneath the surface. Surrounded by serious faces, he shifted his gaze to Sarah. In their eyes, he saw mirroring uncertainty coupled with spark a bond solidified in shared ambition. The presentation began, and as they unveiled their vision, embracing failures as learning points, the tension in the room gradually transformed. James focused intently on their journey, enveloping the board in the narrative of resilience and potential. Sarah's ideas danced like fireflies, illuminating flickers of intrigue among the panel. But as they reached the climax of their pitch, the faintest whisper of discontent crawled back. "This is admirable, but are you confident this idea genuinely resonates with our existing market?" It was his rival's voice, sharp as ever, casting shadows over their hard work. Steeling himself, James squared his shoulders. The stakes had elevated, and this was his moment to confront not only the board but the haunting doubts that had dogged him for months. "We believe this represents not just a product, but a movement that challenges the status quo. It dares us to innovate, to grow together." The gazes around the table sharpened, registering the shift in energy. This wasn't just about numbers. This was about passion, about believing in potential shared, not just personally but collectively. As the meeting adjourned, James felt a surge of something new, clarity wrapped in a cloak of uncertainty. Whatever the outcome, he had unveiled a part of himself he thought lost forever, blending his reality with Sarah's dreams. Yet just when he believed the tension had dissipated, he caught sight of the glimmer in his rival's eyes, sending an icy jolt down his spine. Perhaps this was just the beginning, a mere exchange in a much larger game. The question loomed, was he prepared to face the next challenge that his rival might throw his way? In the aftermath of the board meeting, James felt as though he stood on the brink of a precipice. The adrenaline had ebbed, leaving behind a raw sense of vulnerability intertwined with burgeoning strength. He had stepped into the spotlight alongside Sarah, forging a connection that transcended the professional facade he had always worn. Yet, with every triumph came the weight of the lurking challenge, and he loathed the thought of his rival's calculated smile shadowing their victory. Days turned into a whirlwind of notifications, as feedback from the board members slowly trickled in. Some responses were supportive, echoing appreciation for the innovative spirit James and Sarah had presented. Yet, in quiet corners of the office, murmurs of doubt began to re-emerge, fueled mainly by his rival's tactical maneuvering. For every compliment, another jab followed, subtly designed to erode his confidence while insinuating that the ideas weren't his own. James was restless, consumed by visions of success mingled with apprehensions that clawed at his resolve. To combat this, he sought out Sarah more frequently, their collaboration becoming a sanctuary against external noise. They delved deeper into the project, experimenting with ideas at the fringes of their original pitch. One afternoon, huddled over coffee in a dimly lit cafe, they sketched out plans for future iterations of the app, ones that would not merely exist but thrive. "I want to add something more personal," Sarah said one afternoon, her brow furrowed in concentration. "People need to feel connected to what we're creating. Maybe something that allows users to share their stories?" James nodded, admiring her creativity. "That's brilliant. We need to convey that our app is more than just functionality. It's about building a community, one that resonates with their experiences," he replied, excitement bubbling within him. As they continued to refine their vision, a transformation began to take place in James. He started to see himself not just as a leader trying to regain footing but as someone capable of deep innovation and connection. Every time Sarah articulated her ideas, he found pieces of his own ambitions mirrored back to him. The renewed energy ignited his desire to take ownership of his leadership role, one that, until now, had felt tenuous at best. Confidence fueled his days. He took proactive strides to address the whispers wafting around the office, confronting one board member's skepticism directly in a subsequent meeting. "I understand the uncertainty, but we're focusing on progress, not perfection. Are we ready to invest in the future, or are we content chasing shadows?" His words caught everyone off guard, reminding them that his vision was a collaborative effort built on a foundation of resilience. Yet, despite this new assertiveness, doubt reared its head once more that evening as he confronted Sarah's fears. They were reflecting on feedback they received, and she hesitated with her next comment. "What if they don't see the potential? What if I'm failing you?" "Sarah," he interjected, his voice steady, "you have to believe in what we're creating. It's not just my responsibility, it's ours. If we fail or succeed, we're doing it together." As he ended the call that night, a heaviness settled in the pit of his stomach. His rival was mobilizing against them, and he sensed a confrontation looming on the horizon. This was no longer just about the app, it was a test of his worth as a leader against a backdrop of increasing corporate tension. In the weeks leading to a second board presentation, something inside James transformed. Every tentative step he'd taken became a deliberate march forward, but he couldn't shake a sense of impending conflict. The game wasn't over. The next move would be pivotal, both for him and Sarah. Burdened with the knowledge that his rival was plotting his next strike, James faced the question that echoed in his mind. Was he ready to confront not just this new challenge, but the shadows of his self-doubt threatening to hold him captive? With multiple stakes on the line, he braced for the inevitable clash that awaited them. The weeks leading to the second presentation sharpened James's focus. He reveled in late nights at the office, poring over data and refining the app's features, but beneath that determination lurked an anxiety that gnawed at him. The whispers of doubt from his colleagues seemed louder with each passing day. Each moment spent in solitude only amplified his introspective torment. He could no longer tell if he was genuinely heeding feedback or simply spiraling into a pit of insecurity. On one particularly restless evening, he found solace in a familiar setting. Seated at the edge of a worn-out bench in the park adjacent to the office, he contemplated his next steps. The ambience, dripping with the golden glow of the setting sun, offered a stark contrast to the tempest in his mind. A few scattered joggers and dog walkers passed by, their trivial conversations sounding like echoes of an untouched reality. Here, away from boardrooms and corporate tactics, he was stripped to his essence. James, the man behind the titles. "It's time to make a bold stance," he whispered to himself, the gentle rustle of leaves loosening the tight grip of apprehension. His whispered resolution morphed into a commitment. He would take control of his narrative. Confidently, he slid his phone from his pocket and sent a text to Sarah. "We need to come together more. Tomorrow, let us brainstorm. I have ideas that I think could help." As they convened the following day, Sarah's enthusiasm felt like electricity igniting his resolve. Over coffee once again, they dissected their shared vision. James had thought about incorporating interactive features that not only engaged users but invited them into a conversation, sharing personal insights and experiences through the app. It struck him that maybe owning this vulnerability, both in the product and his leadership, could give them the edge they needed. Yet every innovative idea sparked an internal war. Would they be enough to combat the unseen force of his rival? This lingering shadow seemed to whisper every time they hit a snag, sowing seeds of doubt that flourished within his psyche. But each constructive banter with Sarah reminded him of their shared ideals and the vision that was beginning to take root. It was during an animated exchange about user engagement that the door opened for self-revelation. Sarah suggested including a mentorship feature, allowing experienced users to guide newcomers. Suddenly, James spotted a parallel: his own journey of self-discovery mirrored in the app's potential. "We're essentially building a bridge for others," he mused, the metaphor striking deep within him. That evening, James returned home with the spark of inspiration lighting the way. He made a mental note to explore what it meant to be a mentor himself, how sharing his own uncertainties could galvanize others against barriers they faced. This shift in perspective transitioned him from a mere facilitator of the app to an active participant in a journey of communal growth. But as he delved deeper into this impactful revelation, he became aware of that hungering fear of confrontation with his rival, the master tactician who thrived in chaos. His heart pounded at the thought of the impending second board meeting, where he would lay bare not just their ideas but his vulnerabilities as well, exposing the very essence of his leadership. As the meeting day drew closer, James felt the weight of expectation teetering on a knife's edge. Was he ready to unveil not just the project but himself? The answer seemed tantalizingly within reach yet dauntingly distant. In that moment, he realized the crux of his struggle lay not only in the rivalry but in the true challenge of leadership, revealing his authentic self. The looming question intensified, pushing him toward a critical juncture. Would he embrace this transformative moment and conquer the shadows of doubt once and for all? Armed with this newfound clarity, he sought to prepare for a battle that would determine the landscape of his career and define the leader he was becoming. The clock was ticking, as James braced himself. The time had come to face the unseen challenger that threatened to undermine all he had worked to build. The morning of the second presentation dawned with an energy that both invigorated and unsettled James. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the pivotal moments unfolding within the walls of corporate structure. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, but it wasn't the external appearance that concerned him, it was the reflection of the man staring back. Who was he becoming as the stakes climbed ever higher? With bold determination, he arrived at the office, mind racing with strategies and potential pitfalls. Every step toward the conference room felt weighted by anticipation, as if each footfall echoed the voices of past doubters. Yet, today he wasn't simply stepping into the boardroom, he was stepping into his own truth. He wouldn't just present an app, he aimed to showcase a vision driven by authenticity and shared experiences. As the meeting commenced, James took a deep breath, soaking in the familiar yet imposing faces arrayed before him. The room was filled with executives, each a titan of the industry but also, to him, symbols of the scrutiny he feared. But today, he wouldn't let fear define him. With a clear voice, he opened the floor to Sarah's ideas first, inviting her to elaborate on their latest features to ensure their shared vision was front and center. Throughout the presentation, waves of confidence washed over him as they discussed the mentorship feature, showcasing the app's potential to connect users on deeper levels. It wasn't merely a product, it was a movement that embraced vulnerability and value. Yet, amid the fervor of excitement, doubt began to ripple under the surface. The critical gaze of his rival sliced through the atmosphere. He leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk plastered on his face as though he were waiting for the right moment to pounce. James could feel the tension building within him, old instincts urging him toward defensiveness. It would be so easy to fold under scrutiny or to slip back into the shadows. James paused for a moment, a microcosm of uncertainty swirling around him. It was the same hesitation he suffered every time doubt threatened to drown his ambition. But today was different, he was armed with purpose. Instead of retreating, he leaned into the discomfort, allowing his voice to strengthen as he addressed the critical questions flowing from his rival. Success in this industry isn't just about competition, James articulated, channeling both the fear and determination coursing through him. It's about dismantling silos and fostering connections that empower users to learn and grow. I believe that this app can forge pathways for mentorship and support, transforming personal challenges into shared triumphs. His words hung in the air, raw and unguarded. The shift was palpable, the board members began exchanging glances, raised eyebrows lifting some weight off his shoulders. It was then that James realized he was not alone in his pursuit. As he navigated through objections and addressed concerns, he noticed the nods of encouragement from those who recognized the courage behind his vulnerability. By the end of the presentation, while James awaited feedback, the tension had transformed into anticipation. What once felt like a battleground now seemed like fertile ground for growth. He had transcended the role of a mere presenter. He had emerged as a leader who dared to be authentic. Leaving the boardroom, he felt lighter, empowered by his ability to own his narrative and accept his vulnerabilities. But as the exhilaration of the moment waned, a new anxiety crept in. What would be the repercussions of his honesty? Would his boldness be embraced, or would it only intensify the rivalry? The question loomed large, as he steeled himself for the aftermath, knowing that the path to defining his leadership was only just beginning. As he prepped to step outside, James felt an insistent nudge from within, awakening a sense of urgency. The confrontation was not over. The true challenge awaited, and there was no turning back now. James walked through the office, the hum of conversations echoing around him. The atmosphere had shifted, whispers ignited interest and concern in equal measure. He could sense the weight of expectations clinging to him, compelling him to consolidate his newfound confidence into tangible actions. With every step, he weighed the implications of his bold words, the thought weaving through his mind that he was now a target, not just for his rival but perhaps for the entire board. Yet, as he neared his desk, his pulse began to steady. It was clear that his presentation had struck a chord. The initial whispers of doubt within him were being replaced with cautious excitement and a growing resolve to carve out his space in this competitive landscape. He settled in, determination crystallizing into a plan. To maintain this momentum, he needed to deepen his understanding of the market and sharpen the app's features further. He pulled out his laptop, diving into user feedback and data analytics from previous iterations of their project. This was not just a task, it was an opportunity, a fertile ground to explore the areas where they could innovate and refine. Charged with purpose, he began to envision not only enhancements for the app but also strategic alliances with stakeholders who shared their vision. Behind every challenge lay a potential set of allies, mentors who could bolster the mission of connection and support. Suddenly, a knock on his office door broke his concentration. It was Sarah, her eyes bright and filled with a mix of admiration and trepidation. "I heard you really held your ground in there," she said, stepping inside. "I'm impressed. You tackled those questions head-on." James smiled but couldn't shake the inner unease. I had to be honest. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just selling an idea, I was sharing a vision." "That's what sets you apart," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "But I also worry." "You saw that look on Adrian's face. He wouldn't let this slide." Her words pricked at James, igniting the fiery embers of anxiety once more. "I know. I feel like I've opened the door and let the wolves in, but running away isn't an option. I have to stand my ground." "And you will," she reassured him. "This is your moment, but you can't do it alone. We'll need to reinforce our proposal. Address the points Adrian raised and show that our plan is not just a nice idea, it's viable, impactful, and necessary." With a nod, James felt the wave of camaraderie swell within him. They began planning their next steps, utilizing the insights gathered from the presentation. Hours passed as they mapped out strategies and the next stage of their pitch. Enthusiasm surged through them, each idea igniting a dialogue that fed into a collective vision, stronger than before. But just as they crafted a clearer path forward, James received a notification the board had scheduled an impromptu meeting to discuss the feedback from the presentation. Dread washed over him. Was this the reckoning? In that moment, he recognized a need for clarity amidst the chaos. He reached for Sarah's shoulder, conveying a silent understanding. This was it, they both knew the stakes had escalated dramatically. As the meeting time approached, James felt a mixture of anticipation and dread ripple through him. He understood that confrontation was inevitable. Growth did not come without trial, the burdens of doubt must be faced down head-on. He steeled himself for what lay ahead. This was a turning point, and the next hour could very well determine his path forward. He whispered to Sarah, "We're not in this alone." As they entered the meeting room, the tension palpable in the air, James felt an electric jolt of awareness. The time had come to face not just questions, but the embodiment of his fears. What new challenges awaited him, and how far could his resolve stretch before breaking? The room was an elongated rectangle, steeped in fluorescent light and the nervous energy of those assembled. James took a steadying breath, the scent of polished wood mingling with the undercurrent of anxiety that shimmered off the walls. Moments before, he had envisioned this gathering as an opportunity to amplify his voice. Now, it felt like a crucible where his resolve would be tested. Adrian stood at the head, his presence looming like a storm cloud, eyes flint and cold. The murmurs faded as silence enveloped them, each person hanging on his impending remarks. James could feel Sarah's reassuring presence next to him, a buoy in the turbulent waters ahead. He took a mental snapshot of this moment, a snapshot that encapsulated his courage to confront the unknown. "Let us get right to it," Adrian said, cutting through the tension. "James, your presentation left several of us pondering the viability of your project. Questions were raised about feasibility, market potential, and ultimately, whether this idea is worth our resources. What are your thoughts? James felt his heart lurch at Adrian's words, the weight of expectation heavier than before. My thoughts, he began, his voice steadier than he felt, are that innovation often comes with risk. Every great idea challenges the status quo. We've seen the data, and I know that our app addresses real user needs in ways current offerings do not. Adrian's eyes narrowed, not out of scrutiny but a challenge, as if he was daring him to falter. That's an optimistic view. What specifically do you plan to address regarding the concerns mentioned? Support us with concrete angles, please. As silence swelled in the room, James felt the pressure mount. He could either crumble under the scrutiny or harness this moment as fuel. He recalled the feedback he had analyzed, the themes of user frustration and unmet expectations that sparked ideas for their app's next iterations. We need to focus on killer features. User experience is paramount. Feedback highlights why they leave competitors. By addressing pain points and creating seamless functionality, we can carve out significant market share. The room shifted slightly, attention pinned to each word as he articulated his vision more clearly. But somewhere in the back of his mind, doubt simmered. What if the board was more inclined to uphold tradition than embrace change? Time ticked steadily as he sensed their skepticism simmering beneath the surface. James, Adrian interjected, while passion is admirable, we need data to back these claims. In concrete figures, what is our projected ROI? Can you assure us that investing in this app won't drain our resources? His throat tightened. The vulnerability of his next response was palpable. Adrian, I can't guarantee miracles, but I can present strategies that align with our financial goals. We'll engage in user-centric testing, big data approaches, and targeted marketing to mitigate risk. Each decision we make will be rooted in measurable outcomes. Adrian glanced around the room, gauging support. James held his breath, aware that his commitment to accountability was on the table now, along with his reputation. But within this gnawing uncertainty, he found a spark, a drive to not just defend his vision but to elevate it. Some of us here are tired of the status quo, another board member finally spoke, their voice tentative yet hopeful. Perhaps we need more of this kind of energy to steer us toward relevant solutions. James met Sarah's encouraging glance, a silent affirmation that his voice could ripple through this boardroom. The tides were shifting, but would it be enough? As the meeting unfolded, discussions flourished, but underneath the exchange was a deep-rooted apprehension toward change and intrinsic wariness that felt all too familiar in his own psyche. He was pushing against not just territorial ambitions but the very nature of his doubts. How to remain resolute in a system not known for welcoming transformative ideas. Adrian, unfazed by the evolving dialogue, returned his gaze to James. This isn't over, James. The board will deliberate, but I'll expect a comprehensive strategic plan by Friday. You have until then to prove the value of this vision. James nodded, understanding the implications of their ultimatum, yet an intricate web of plans began to form in his mind, a roadmap not just for the project but for the shift he intended to instigate within himself. Standing before the board would be but the beginning of an escalation. He had survived an encounter with his fears, but the critical test awaited. What had once felt like a singular moment marked by tension had now transformed into a mission of clarification and commitment. As they exited the meeting, James couldn't help but ponder, if this was a success, what might that mean for the future? He realized now that the greatest challenges were still yet to come, merging personal growth with professional uprising. Adrian may have laid down the gauntlet, but it was up to James to redefine his path and, perhaps, deliver an unexpected revelation about what he was truly capable of. The question hung in the air: could he actually transform this moment of doubt into a defining victory? The din of the boardroom dimmed behind James as he stepped into the fresh air outside, the weight of the meeting clinging to him like a second skin. Each footfall echoed the rising tension within as moments replayed in his mind, a relentless loop betraying his anxiety. Friday loomed ahead, teeth bared, and the uncertainty of delivering a detailed strategic plan gnawed at his resolve. What did he need to prove? The board might not only question his project but also the very essence of his leadership. Doubts threatened to penetrate his growing determination. In the next few days, he would have to tap into every resource, reaching out for data, honing concepts, rallying his small but devoted team. Yet, additionally, there was more at stake, a chance for self-discovery buried in the ticking clock. As he strolled through the sun-dappled street, James felt a stirring within him, a flicker of ambition kindling as he passed storefronts brimming with ingenuity and innovation. He absorbed the essence of creation around him, the cafe that relied on local oradors for its beans, the bookstore hosting community events. These businesses owed their success to adaptability, a principle he needed to integrate into his own work ethic. The energy within him began to build an internal cadence, a rhythm that drove him to his co-working space without hesitation. Inside, he found Sarah poring over user feedback and market research. Her unwavering enthusiasm infused the sterile space with warmth. "You ready to tackle the challenge?" she asked, not even looking up. "More than ready," he replied, grasping the edge of the desk to steady his thoughts. He glanced at the whiteboard where halting ideas and sketches danced. With an impulsive decision, he wiped clean the clutter and wrote user experience in big, bold letters at the top. This would be the guiding point. He'd defocus his plan around understanding and enhancing how users interacted with their app. "What are we thinking?" Sarah inquired, finally engaging with his initiative. He took a breath, feeling the rush of clarity as his strategies began to crystallize. "We need to dive deeper into user testing. Let us gather qualitative feedback, what users genuinely feel, not just the numbers. Then, we can prioritize features that resonate most." With each passing hour, the two dove into brainstorming sessions, a flurry of post-it notes and digital mock-ups illuminating their ideas. The more they collaborated, the more he unearthed insights that confounded his prior perceptions. Why had he doubted the feasibility of the very project that had sparked such profound inspiration? Here he was, dissecting pain points alongside Sarah, revealing hidden competencies they could amplify: vulnerability, empathy, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. James noted the shift occurring within him, doubts slowly receding like tides in the bay. Conflicts morphed into challenges to tackle rather than walls to scale. He could identify specific metrics to address Adrian's concerns, like real user pain points that would drive actionable growth, not just theories. In a sudden moment of clarity, James realized the project was an extension of himself. Its success or failure was not just about numbers, it was about trust, courage, and an undying belief in potential. As he entered the late hours, he and Sarah put together a preliminary draft of the strategic plan. In those moments spent in the co-working space, the line between personal and professional development blurred magnificently. But amidst the triumph, an all-too-familiar anxiety emerged: the thought of facing Adrian again. Was he genuinely ready for the depth of judgment that awaited him? As every hour advanced, the walls felt both empowering and confining, pushing him toward a reckoning he could no longer delay. "I think we've got something special here," Sarah said, exhaustively stretching her arms as the clock inched toward midnight. James nodded but felt an unsettling tension, the exhilaration slowly turning to dread. The road ahead had transformed into a pinnacle of confrontation, and he realized that just as much as he'd grown, Adrian would demand even more. Would his determination carry him through the next phase? The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, yet deep down, he understood. Facing the board was not solely about presenting numbers, it was about owning the journey that had unfolded within him. That journey hadn't just been a proposal, it was about self-actualization and confronting fears. The time had come to face a pivotal question. When he stepped into that room again, would he hold fast to his newfound clarity, or would the fortress of doubt envelop him once more? As Friday arrived, the sun emerged from behind the clouds as if heralding the defining moment in James' journey. He stood in front of the mirror once more, this time with an unshakable resolve knit into his very being. The past weeks had revealed layers of resilience and depth he had previously underestimated. Each step leading back to the boardroom felt charged with opportunity. He was armed not just with data, but with conviction. Entering the office where the meeting was set to unfold, he felt the weight of his own journey pushing him forward. This wasn't just about presenting an app anymore. It was about demonstrating a transformation, his evolution from a CEO on the brink of despair to a leader willing to embrace vulnerability as a cornerstone of innovation. Today, he wasn't merely spinning a narrative, he was living it. As the board reconvened, tension threaded through the air. James could see Adrian sitting at the head of the table, evaluating him with those razor-sharp eyes that exuded both challenge and opportunity. Every glance from the board members brought with it reminders of the questions that had been raised just days ago about the app's viability. "James," Adrian addressed him, the barbed tension palpable. "I assume you're here with a clearer strategic plan today." "Absolutely," he replied, his voice unwavering, fueled by the purpose that had anchored him in the days leading up to this moment. "Together with Sarah, we've not just refined the app's features but built an inclusive vision that centers on user experience." The board's demeanor shifted slightly, intrigue replacing skepticism. James leaned into the energy, kicking off the presentation with confidence that brimmed from deeper defenses. He would speak not merely as a CEO but as someone who had forged insights from his unique journey. Presenting the data he had painstakingly gathered, he outlined user feedback highlighting frustrations in existing platforms, heightened by their shared exploration of empathetic solutions. Sarah, matching his energy, detailed their innovative features designed with user engagement and mentorship at the forefront, a true community-building application. As their synergy resonated throughout the room, James finally felt the retreat of doubt. They had crafted something tangible, breathing life into mundane figures by showcasing the human element, the yearning for connection, growth, and shared success. The room slowly shifted, an invisible agreement forming through passionate dialogue fueled by inspiration rather than fear. "Okay," Adrian finally interjected, a measure of respect lacing his voice. "What's your timeline for implementing these features?" "Within the next quarter, we can initiate further user tests and roll out the first iteration by the end of the fiscal year," James asserted. Behind the measured confidence was a realization that their momentum was no longer about him or Sarah alone. It was an idea gaining traction, a movement building through genuine desire for innovation intertwined with personal stories. Adrian's expression softened momentarily, and his voice was almost curious. "And if we encounter backlash?" User engagement metrics can shift rapidly. James chose this moment to zero in on the aspect that had transformed him within the process. Yes, failure would come, but together, they would create a culture of resilience and adaptation, a learning landscape where feedback was merely a stepping stone to success. "Every challenge will be a chance to grow, to adapt. We will be proactive and pivot, then reflect to understand why, ultimately transforming setbacks into opportunities." A newfound acceptance rippled through the board. As deliberations continued, James could sense the tide turning, a bond forming within the group that transcended the numbers. He felt an invigorating tide of recognition from his colleagues, a realization that they weren't merely abstract stakeholders, they were potential partners, allies willing to invest in a shared vision, one empowered by the fusion of personal connection and professional ambition. A consensus emerged, tentative but solid. The board approved the next steps, tasking James and Sarah with the charge of moving forward together, outlined in a strategic plan that would recognize not just their capabilities but the growth of the very company they represented. With that final decision, a profound sense of personal achievement enveloped James. He knew the journey had forever altered him. As he exchanged a triumphant look with Sarah, it was clear that this was also her moment. Their partnership had become an undeniable asset, and together they would foster a professional lifetime's worth of pathways to fulfillment. Emerging from the boardroom, James felt lighter. He had conquered not only the adversarial forces in that meeting but the inner barriers he believed had been impervious. The acknowledgement from his peers flowed as reassurance. His courage to advocate for authenticity had not only rescued the app's future but established a new leadership paradigm defined by shared growth and vulnerability. With renewed confidence, he was ready to face the world, arms extended, open to collaboration and innovation. The shadows of self-doubt had all but melted away. He had emerged intact, fortified by the product of long nights and reflective sessions alongside Sarah. In reaching for his dreams and lifting others with him, he had finally unearthed the success he always envisioned, a thriving team, laden with ambition and camaraderie. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, James smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary, both for himself and those he now inspired. He had proven that authentic collaboration could ignite not just individual aspirations but transform an entire organization into a beacon of creativity fueled by shared dreams. Now was the moment to solidify the connection with all who shared this journey with him. With that in mind, remember, You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to transform your own life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support, because every single action matters. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending, as we cherish each insight shared. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's the moment to uplift others and journey together in authenticity. Don't wait even one more second. Join our community now.